Let me welcome Mr. Jason Phillips. Good night, Jason. Welcome to the Marcia Week Show.
Good evening, Marcia. Good evening, the good people of St. Peter, and by extension, good night, Barbados.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you. Pleasure having you for sure. And tonight we have serious business to deal with because we're talking about bread and butter issues, kitchen table issues. We're talking about gas prices, and your question is you're asking the question, is government wiping out the middle class? You're looking at the rising costs, right, that is happening in Barbados because of the fuel prices. They're telling us that, but we know that there's some taxes that they could easily, we're not going to say easily, but they could plan for it, in removing some of those taxes. So the question is tonight, Jason, how have the increases in the fuel, excise tax, and VAT affected the average Barbadian?
Well, even before I answer that specific question, I just want to give the viewing audience some context. You
Yes.
know that within the last 2 weeks, the cost of liquefied petroleum gas has increased twice in 2 weeks. So we have £100 cylinder moving from $160.39
Mm-hmm.
to $182.81. That is an increase of $22.42, or a 14% increase. That's a huge amount of money to put onto to put on to the public in such a short space of time. It
Yes.
says to me that this government really does not even consider the average Barbadian. Consider someone who has a little food business. I have to buy that £100 gas cylinder. It means now that she has to increase her cost. Of the £25 cylinder, LPG cylinder, move from $46.70 to $50.80. For crying out loud, you have to have some heart. Barbados Labour Party led government, the £22 cylinder and the £20 cylinder also increased significantly. And we know that when the cost of fuel increases, especially in such a significant manner, it affects every sector of the economy. And when cost of transporting goods and providing services rises, businesses often pass that increase, that extra cost, to their customer. And you have to that is then compounded with the expensive VAT at 17.5%, right?
Yeah.
So as a result, families are paying more for groceries, they're paying more for transportation, they're paying more for utilities and other essential
But
services.
Jason, if I may pause there, because some people, they are listening and they might say, well, there's nothing the government can do about this. There's increase in fuel prices all over the world. We know what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz and so on. But here you are talking about the VAT. Can you explain how the government could do something about that particular tax in particular?
I am so very glad you asked me that question. First of all, and I'm going to say it very slowly, Barbadians elect government to manage the affairs of the economy,
Mhm.
not to hide behind external factors. Because regardless of what government is in power, there will always be external factors, whether it was the Gulf War in the 90s, whether it is the Ukraine war that's going on in Eastern Europe, whether it is the war that is going on in Western Asia, or what you call the Middle East. There will always be problems in the world, but we elect a government to manage our economy, to protect us from these things. So if you know you are unable, unwilling to manage the economy, and instead use the external factors as an excuse for behaving in a way that you are, then we have no need for a government like what we have now. And furthermore, our oil or gas doesn't come from Iran. We get our fuel from next door Venezuela. So
Mainly it's Venezuela, or is it in the US?
Venezuela.
Okay.
Right? We don't get our fuel from West Asia. But at the end of the day, the government must institute policies to protect our people. Let me give a perfect example. A study was done by the Inter-American Bank, and they discovered in the year of that study that government earned $227.5 million from the fuel excess tax. That accounted for 7% of government revenue. So you can see that government is getting a wash of money from the fuel and excess tax. And this fuel and excess tax is only 7%. So if government really wants to ease the pressure, they could consider doing a number of things. One, they could reduce the VAT. Perhaps move it from 17.5% back to 15% and see how things work out.
Yeah.
They can also reduce the fuel excess tax, because as it is, not only did they make $227.5 million in the year, on an annual basis, government is raking in $183 million. You know, they get a lot of money. They can give people some elbow room.
Yeah, you know, I'm saying that this excise, the fuel excise tax. I mean, I know that during the budget they said that they were going to do some kind of it is a 2026 budget. They announced a temporary reduction in the fuel excise tax. Okay, it was temporary, and so therefore I am saying that if you could actually reduce it, it means that if we're having these external factors, as you're saying, Jason, right? My question is, what is stopping the government from considering reducing that tax? They are they're collecting a whole bunch of money, a whole set of money in revenue.
Hundreds of millions. Listen, remember we used to pay road tax. Remember?
Yes.
And they start with the road tax and they get in the tax through the fuel. So as you put fuel in your car, you're getting money. So they're getting money from the where they used to get money once a year from owner of an automobile. They get time you fuel up your vehicle. But what is worse, they're not only getting money for fueling up vehicles, they're also getting money for fueling a lawnmower. When you fuel the bushwhacker.
Wow.
When you fuel the tractor that is in the cane ground. So the net is not even wider. So whereas they were getting X amount of money from vehicles that were using the road, they're now capturing any person. If you go and buy fuel to light the grass or cook in the yard, they're getting fuel tax on that. So they could, because the net is so wide and they have captured so many people, they could lower the fuel tax. So I'm not saying get rid of it, but you can lower it.
It can be lowered because
the amount of money they're making, they can lower the tax. But
correct.
And listen, this got implications for the middle class, because the middle class may or earns too much money to qualify for government assistance, but not enough money to comfortably absorb this continuous increase in the cost of living. And as a result, what is going to happen over time, because government is taxing these people, they're going to become their spending power. The spending power is going to become less and less. And what government is doing, government is fueling inflation. because things are now becoming more and more expensive. So you're gonna find that those people who are in the middle class or the lower middle class are now going to be in the working poor.
Correct.
And those people who are in the middle class or the upper middle class, they're now going to be barely in the middle class.
Barely,
All
yeah.
in other words, right? And they're not going to have disposable income to buy a house, to send the children overseas to study, to buy a car. And they're going to find that it's just going to be getting by. They're going to be paying a mortgage and keeping a car longer. They're going to be driving an old car. And they're going to be middle class, but not having disposable
Not
income.
having in name only. And I mean,
Yes.
you talk about the middle class, so we could break that down. I know you do a lot with small with entrepreneurship and small businesses. You know, I hate to say them small business, call them small businesses, but you know, so we're talking here not just for, we're not asking for this or just relief for the consumers, but we're talking about businesses or small business or farmers. You talk about the tractors, you know, transport operators. What about the fishermen? And I was talking to somebody, some of the fishermen, and they pointed that out to me as well, Mr. Phillips, that they were paying fuel tax. You know,
Yes.
it seems to me that, Mr. Phillips, that the government is seeking to preserve the revenue that they're receiving from this particular tax. That they're going to blame everybody else. They're going to call on Massey to, you know, reduce the prices, but not the government, to, you know, lower the excise fuel tax.
I have to remind the government that government is not the backbone of this economy. The backbone of this economy is the thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises that employ people. And if government continues to increase the cost of energy, it means that the electricity is going to go up. All of the commodities in every sector is going to go up. And that is going to wipe out the middle class, and it is going to drive businesses into exile, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah.
Government must do more. And it isn't like they cannot do more. They cannot use the war in Iran as an excuse. Government has to plan. And right now, they are running us in trouble because they are borrowing too much money. For example, for every $100 that we earn, government pay $94.60 in servicing debt. $94.60. In other words, we only got $5.40 to service our roads, to pay our teachers, our policemen, to run the hospital. And the government is not coming and telling the people the truth. Barbados is up to the eyeballs in debt. Let me repeat it, Barbadians. 94.6% of our earnings go in servicing debt. For every $100 we make in Barbados, we are paying $94.60 in servicing the debt, and we only got $5.40. That's what you getting paid when the week come.
Yes.
$100, and when you finish, you only got $5 to spend. Then you got to go and borrow money to get work again, and that's why we are borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, because we are borrowing to pay off debt. And when we get money, then we borrow again. So we pay off this debt, and then we borrow for a longer term to pay off the debt that we just borrowed for, and we are kicking the can down the road. And that is why they can't do things that they're supposed to do, because the cost of energy should not be so high. But rather than come out and tell the people the truth, that they're borrowing too much money, and to services that they got tax the hair of your head, they will try to blame it on the war in Iran. You will always have external factors. Government must manage the economy properly. They're not. They're not coming and speaking the truth to the people.
But I want to know. Let's go back to the middle class, because sometimes when we talk about these things, it go over people's heads. Somebody was even saying we should have had, you know, some like some slides or something, and we'll work on that. We'll work on that, Bureau. You're right, because I think what they're aiming for, Jason,
They
is
want a visual. They want to see what we're talking about. That's
yeah, they
good.
want to be able to see it and they want to understand it. So let's break it down again for the middle class. Why should they be concerned? And define what are the concerns? What should be the concerns of the middle class, Jason?
Inflation. Inflation means that the cost of things are climbing faster than the income that you get. So as prices outpace income growth, many households are finding it hard to save money. So in other words, you could imagine at one time getting paid $4,000 a month. You could pay a mortgage, you could own a car,
Yeah.
you could have two children, and that's on one salary. And usually it's the man who was making that money, and the woman will stay at home and clean the house and cook the food and look after the children. Right? No. You got a man and a woman living in a house together, making $4,000 a piece. And they find it hard to pay the mortgage, pay for the car, put diesel in the, or gasoline in the car, pay the utility bills and the light bill, the water bill, buy groceries, and support the children. They cannot even go on a summer vacation overseas abroad. So $4,000 incomes ain't cutting it no more. Anybody making less than $5,000 a month feeling the pinch. So inflation is where the cost outpaces the amount of earnings you're getting, and you cannot. So for example, right now a chicken costs 30. I saw a chicken yesterday in the supermarket for $36.
Wow.
And maybe 2 years ago, you could get chicken for $18, $20.
Yes, probably
right?
20. A small one, yeah.
Yeah, $18 or $20. You could get chicken for $18 or $20. No, you got chicken at $30, $36. You got a rice. Okay, what? Government must find a way, and don't let me get started. Even though people, the inflation is high because the cost of living in Barbados is too high, government find it fit to bring in migrant labor. So rather than dealing with your own people first, you're providing work for, and that's another discussion for another night.
Yeah.
But Barbadians are not sleeping. You cannot be bringing labor and giving people that are not Barbadians work, and Barbadians who are here smelling hell to get a good paying job.
Yeah, and to add to what you're saying in terms of the middle class, folks, I want to further break it down. Think about just at the pump, period, how you fill up your vehicle. Those of you who drive, just think about that. This is how it's going to affect the middle class. Getting to work. Most people, you don't drive, but you commute. You have to take the children to school. Run errands. You're caring for your elderly patients, whatever, parents. I'm sorry. What about food prices? That Jason was farming. We mentioned that fishing. All of these things. The small businesses, the tradespeople. All of these things in all of these areas, and we have to be able to understand. We have to take it from up here and begin to understand how it is affecting us, the middle class. And that's why some people they're saying, you know what, the middle class, they're about to wipe them up. But Jason, what should the government do to ease the burden on Barbadians? Should it be decrease in VAT? Should it be the fuel tax? Should it be a decrease in income tax? What do you think?
It's not a decrease in income tax. Income tax is what you get paid. But
yes,
sorry, you're correct.
The lower income taxes.
Yes, they can lower income tax. Yes,
and the rate.
Yes, sorry, I thought you said income. Yes, definitely, government should reduce income tax. with a reduction in income tax, you got more spending power. So you know you can generate spending in the economy. That means small and medium-sized enterprises can begin to flourish. Government should also responsibly reduce the VAT. You don't have to reduce it by a base set at once. As I said, you could go back to the 15%, see how that is working out. If government can manage it, then we leave it there for a year or so. And if you can ease it down a little bit more, because ideally, I feel that VAT should be no more than 10%. Because as it stands now, 17.5% is mighty close to 20%. So for
Yeah.
every dollar you make, you pay almost 20 cents in every dollar you. So that's $17.50. That's a lot of money. Okay, each dollar, okay, each $100. Government definitely has to reduce the fuel excess tax. They got a big enough net that they can reduce the fuel tax. They have no excuse. It has nothing at all to do with the war in Iran, between Iran and America. If you look around in the Caribbean, Barbados is paying too much money for energy,
Yeah.
and yeah, on a comparative basis, government is making a wash of money in taxes when it comes to fuel. I believe that government should do one and tell the prime minister this: reduce the excise, the fuel tax, reduce the VAT, and reduce the income tax. That will give people more spending power, and it will cause people to spend more. We have an issue. I spoke to this last time I was on air. People are not getting children because people do not have money to feed or support the children. And if you want people to get more children, you have to put more money in their pockets. Some people might say there's no more middle class. People in the middle class will be like doctors, lawyers. The lower middle class will be teachers, and so on. But a lot of those people are feeling the pinch. Some of them, some of us might be considered as the working poor. But if government continue on this trajectory, continue to go in this direction they're going in a very short space of time, we are not going to have a middle class. We're going to be like some of the other Caribbean islands. It is the middle class. And the problem with being called middle class, I can repeat myself, I said it earlier, you're not going to qualify. You can be in that bracket of earning that you can get assistance from government. But because government increasing taxation and because the prices of commodities are increasing, you can find that yourself, you ain't getting the help from government and you got to pay for everything. So therefore, your spending power is becoming less and less and less. And the money, the $4,000 or the $5,000 you were getting paid a month can only do so much. It sounds like a lot, but because of the inflation, it's not going to do very much.
Yeah, yeah. And when you think of how much fuel, I love the way that you broke it down. Every time that you go to the pump, you are paying. The government is getting their piece out of that. And as much as the prime minister, is making she's making these announcements and asking the private sector needs to do this, the private sector needs to do that. We are sitting and we are waiting to hear what is the government going to do, right, Jason? Because a driver, if you if you do 50 liters of gas each week, a lot of people do more than that, right? Over a month, think about how much liters of gas that you use for the month. And each time that you use the gas, right?
Tax.
It's tax. So you could tell me, she could tell us with her mouth that she cares, but the point is this: as you said, we want to see how you are managing. It's like a mother or a father, a parents in a home, and like what's happening now, and you have to sit down and you have to budget and you have to work it out so that the children they're not feeling the pinch. So they can still get their snacks. They can still, you might have to do something a little differently. We want to know, what is the government doing differently, right, Jason? Is that what you're saying?
I tell them start using external factors as an excuse. There will always be instances abroad that will affect the world. All of the countries in the world will be affected by the war in Ukraine. All of the countries in the world will be affected by the war between the USA and Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. But government has a responsibility to um, develop policy to manage this economy properly. And I'm saying to the Barbados Labour Party led government, reduce the VAT, reduce the fuel excess tax, reduce income tax. But when you reduce these things, you will reduce the cost of energy, you will reduce the cost of doing business in Barbados. People will have more spending power and people will buy more things and businesses will flourish. As it
Yeah.
stands, get out of the business of telling private enterprises how much money they can make when the year comes, because this is still a democracy. We still practice capitalism in Barbados. We are not a communist country where a government tells the owners of private enterprises how much money they can or cannot make. Why don't you go and tell the banks that they need to reduce the hundreds of millions of dollars they make every year in fees? Or you can start telling all of the prime minister can start telling all the other enterprises across Barbados. You have to be careful, when you have private investors, because Massey is not a Barbadian company, when they realize that they are coming here to do business and the government is not kind to them, those people just uproot and leave.
Or interfering,
That's
or
what
interfering.
you know how many people Barbadians then will be on the bread line. I remember that I had a jewelry store on Broad Street, and the union was marching, and that jewelry store is no longer there. You have to be careful how you treat foreign investors, because they don't have to be here. They can
Mm-hmm.
take their business somewhere else, and then you have 300 or 400 people on the breadline, and that 300 or 400 people, they might got two children. They might be the only breadwinner in the house, and then all of a sudden you got 1,000 people struggling.
Yes. Yeah.
You really don't want
I have a
but,
I have a question there, and we have another 5 minutes. Have you changed, asking the viewers, have you changed your driving habits because of fuel prices? So that's a question. I'm watching the comment section, asking the viewers, because we really want to get it home to them. And what other changes have you made? Changes, you're on the road with people there, Jason. What are you hearing on the road? The prices of the food
the
items, and
fact of the matter is, to answer that question, there's not much you can do. You have to drive work. So if you live in Spikestown, you're going to work in Bridgetown, you have to drive to Bridgetown, and you have to drive back home. And because the roads have so many potholes in them, you can
mm-hmm,
get idling with gas, right? There isn't much you can do unless you can put down your vehicle and catch your bus. It is for government to do something, reduce the tax on the fuel excise tax.
mm-hmm. um
So why don't Mia reduce the? I
okay,
but
so
I won't frame it like that. Yes, the soil starch. We in St. Peter, especially people living in Bosquebella in the ground, they are not connected to the sewage, and that sewage, to me, that tax is really to ease the burden on the hotels and restaurants on the south coast and the west coast, right? Because when you can charge someone in St. Lucie and in St. Peter, um, so it starts. To me, it's an unfair tax,
mm-hmm,
because if you're not connected to the sewer, then why pay a tax for something you're not getting? In fact, we can't even use the water in St. Peter and St. Lucie. Parts of St. Peter and parts of St. Lucie.
and you're still paying that tax. I'm trying to get some of the other comments before you go, as you we just have a few more minutes to go. But I'm thinking, Mr. Phillips, of the
Mm.
crop over season. You will see people with their stall, because I know you speak on behalf of entrepreneurs, and they are selling their food. And as soon as I heard this, honestly, they were the first people who came to mind. How are they going to manage? It means that they're going to, when you go to buy your food at crop over, your pigtail or your chips or whatever you're buying, the price of that is going to increase because they have to buy that bottle of gas. They are now spending more money to buy the bottle of gas and more money to transport it, because most times they have to get, they have to go collect it. So you're more on transportation. They're spending more money at the wholesale to buy the food to sell, more gas to cook it. So obviously, that is going to be passed on to the crop over consumers, those who go to the events. Any thoughts on that, Jason, before we move on?
In order, I believe that we use the crop over, but not only crop over, this is going to spread throughout the island. In order to pay the bottom line, you can find small and medium-sized businesses increasing this because it's no way that government can increase the cost of a 100-pound cylinder of liquefied petroleum gas by $22 and change, and the people in oil stains selling food don't increase the price of the food in oil stains or in St. James or in St. Smith's Village and St. Peter. Not only a crop over things in, but let me tell you something. This is an indicator that the economy is under pressure.
Yes.
Government is not coming out and saying anything. Why would you increase the cost of energy in Barbados in a 2-week span twice? Unless you are finding it hard to raise revenue. And why are you finding it hard to raise revenue when you have borrowed billions of dollars? This government has borrowed, this Motley administration has borrowed the most money in the history of Barbados, and I dare say in the history of the English-speaking the CARICOM islands. No other country that I know of have borrowed so much money. I don't know how we're going to repay this money. And the hurtful thing about it is that when the Prime Minister leaves office in the next election, she don't have to worry about repaying this money now. That's the hurtful thing. They are just going on a borrowing spree. We cannot see value for money. I cannot see. They borrow money to fix the roads and all kind of thing, and I cannot see value for money on one road here and there. But I am not seeing true value for money, and the cost of living in Barbados is too high because Barbadians are overtaxed. Government, I can reiterate what I said. They have to reduce the fuel tax. They must reduce the VAT, and they must increase, not increase, they must reduce income tax. If you increase wages like they did recently, and then increase the cost of living, they have done nothing. They're spending tot in mud.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Fuel, Mr. Fuel, Mr. Fuel, you're right. Mr. Phillips, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and for us having this very sobering conversation. And we always look forward to your segments, and we look forward to you next week. All right.
Thanks.
So
I know tonight was a little bit more serious, but sometimes we have to look at the serious issues too. The cost of living in Barbados is way too high.
I mean, we're serious. I'm going into another serious issue now at the hospital. So we always have to look into serious matters. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips.
Thanks, and good night to the good people of St. Peter and Barbados. Good night.
Yes, God bless. Bye bye.